We got some breaking news out of the NFL. Mike Garafolo from NFL Media is reporting that Brandon Aiyuk has officially requested a trade from the 49ers after an offseason of unsuccessful attempts to reach an extension. Despite a recent meeting, the Niners haven't been willing to engage in negotiations since May, so Aiyuk has respectfully asked out. Congratulations to anybody who had July 16th as the date that Brandon Aiyuk would be requesting a trade. You are our big winner. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Because we're at the point now where the 49ers would likely be wanting to engage in those negotiations because they're getting closer to training camp, and this is about the time. Rookies actually report today for the 49ers. And we're getting closer to the point where the Niners would be wanting to work on that extension, and they've apparently not engaged in those contract talks. So I'm interested to see now whether this trade request turns into the 49ers kicking it into gear as far as negotiating goes, seeing if maybe they come up toward Brandon Aiyuk's asking price, seeing if they start, because if they've not had discussions since May, you've probably still got the 49ers with their lowest lowball offer, and you have Brandon Aiyuk with his highest offer out there. And if they've not had talks to try and find a middle ground, like, of course, like nothing's going to happen. I will say this. I don't think negotiations are done entirely because we saw Deebo Samuel before the draft request a trade, and that was dire. I think we've memory hold a little bit how bad the Deebo situation was for the 49ers. When the Jets were on the clock at 10, everybody I know who knows stuff with the 49ers was like, yeah, hey, he might get traded here. Like, he might just go to the Jets for the 10th pick. And it didn't happen. They drafted Garrett Wilson, and Samuel eventually got an extension done. So I will say, this doesn't mean things are necessarily over. But I do think, one, that this will and should probably kick the 49ers into gear on some level. But two, this also doesn't necessarily matter that much.
Yeah, Kyle, I mean, this is sort of the next natural step, right? We're waiting for this. Like, this is,
It took a while.
I don't know, why do the 49ers do business this way, though? It's got to be like one of the most frustrating things to work for them. Like, just get the deal done. Like, I don't know if they realized just how bad Bosa was for like the first 8 games of the season last year.
I promise
Because,
they realized it.
Well, they should realize it. And whose fault is that? Like, you didn't work through a deal, and then you gave him the moon, but you should have just taken care of business earlier. And for Aiyuk, he's such an important piece, not just to the current team, but what this team is going to look like in the next 5 to 8 years. And to not like willingly lock him up right now, and to avoid this drama and avoid making a player feel like he's unwanted and everything else and hold out. I just don't get it. It just feels like it's bad business, and it doesn't seem like it works out for them. They end up paying the mint anyway. So, like, what exactly are we doing here?
That's what I'm questioning. I'm with you. I've always wondered kind of why they did business this way, particularly when you see the wide receiver market exploding the way it has.
Yeah. I mean, this is the going rate. You can't just say, look, I want to live in that neighborhood, but I only want to pay $1 million when every house in the neighborhood is $5 million.
And if they wanted to pay him $25 million a year, whatever the number is, then they should then they could have done that earlier in the off season.
Yeah.
Aiyuk said as much, that if they had come with 25 or 26 million early in the offseason, then he's signing it. And wow, look at this. The wide receiver market's set. And now the Niners got Aiyuk at a relative bargain. Because here's the thing, and this is something I did a bad thing, James. I got into an argument with somebody on Facebook.
Oh, no.
God, it was like 2009 all over again. I hated myself afterwards. I felt dirty. I took a shower. It was nasty. But they more or less said Brandon Aiyuk is going to make $14 million, and that's what he's worth, which is just insane. Like, that's nuts. Brandon Aiyuk is one of the, I don't know, 10 best receivers in the sport.
Yeah. If you can argue higher than that. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. You could make an argument that it's higher than that. No doubt. And if you go look at it, like deep dive the numbers, Matt Harmon at Reception Perception does a really great job of wide receiver analysis. and he makes these charts of how productive receivers are on particular routes and how often they run particular routes. Brandon Aiyuk's chart of all these different routes, everything's green because he's in the 90th plus percentile in every single route from a production standpoint. And then you tack on what he does as a run blocker. And all of a sudden you have this player who is invaluable to your offense, both as a pass catcher and as a blocker. Plus, he is the favorite target of your franchise quarterback.
Yeah, there's that.
I don't understand. I don't understand it. And I would hope that the 49ers look at this and they're not viewing Brandon Aiyuk as a super replaceable piece, because the fact of the matter is he's not.
And Kyle, I totally agree. He's just not replaceable. Like, he is an exceptional receiver, and he's young, and he fits the timeline for the next generation of 49ers. And it's fine that you went out and drafted a wide receiver, but that wasn't to supplant Brandon Aiyuk. That was because you're going to need more wide receivers down the road. And again, to like get back to the house analogy, that's like buying a fixer upper in that $5 million neighborhood. And still paying $2 million for it, but you're going to fix it up and you're going to put a bunch of money and time into it. Like, what are they doing here? Either you're a contender or you're not. And these are moves right now that make it feel like you're not. You are hurting the value of your players. You're hurting like the overall growth of a player. And again, we saw it last year with Bosa. Like, you waited, and then finally you get a deal done on the eve of, game one or whatever it was.
Yeah,
and
he just doesn't practice. Yeah.
He just doesn't look right. He doesn't look right the whole season. And it's like, hey, whose fault is that? And it's just, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
The same could be said for Debo, by the way. Debo, the year he held out, was not the same player in his return. And he talked about how much the offseason contract stuff had an impact on him during the season. With Brandon Aiyuk, the 49ers are never going to be a team that is passing it top 5 times in the league. They're never going to be they may not even be in the upper half of pass attempts. But Brandon Aiyuk's ability to win on all these different routes forces defenses to defend the 49ers in a pretty specific way. And if you don't have that, you become easier to defend, which is where I don't buy into the idea that Brandon Aiyuk just does what any old receiver could do and they could just replace him with anybody and be fine. Like, they'll produce offense, but not at the level that at the heights that they can get to now, or at the level that they can get to now. So ultimately, here's where this sits for me, because we got to hit a break. The 49ers still hold all the leverage here, because Brandon Aiyuk is under contract for this season. The 49ers are trying to win a Super Bowl. That's why I don't think they're going to trade him, because there's nothing they're going to get for Brandon Aiyuk that is going to help them as much as Brandon Aiyuk will this year. Like, just fact. So I don't think they're going to trade him this year. Aiyuk, if he wants to hold out the entire season, he doesn't accrue a full season, which puts him back next year in this exact same spot, where he has now lost an entire year's worth of paychecks, by the way.
Yeah.
That's hustling backwards. So the incentive is, as per the CBA, the incentive is for Brandon Aiyuk to play. And then the 49ers have the franchise tag, which they can then just retain Brandon Aiyuk the following year on a fully guaranteed deal worth an average of the top 5 salaries at the position. And now they've gotten Brandon Aiyuk for 2 years at cheaper than they would have had he signed a long-term extension. So despite the trade request, and if you're just tuning in, Mike Garafolo from NFL Media has reported that Brandon Aiyuk has officially requested a trade from the 49ers. Despite the trade request, I'm not that moved.
Nope.
I think it's ridiculous how the 49ers do business, but the ball is still in San Francisco's court. They still have a chance to go to the negotiating table and work out a long-term deal. And if Aiyuk just says, I'm done playing for the 49ers, and that's it, I don't want to do it anymore, then he'll probably play there this season and maybe the next one, because that's what the CBA says the 49ers can do.